Out of nowhere, the Toronto Raptors have entered the Damian Lillard sweepstakes. So in today's video, we need to answer, should the Raptors really make this push, and what would it cost them to acquire this superstar point guard? Let's get into it. This is Amateur Hour Sports, where it is all Toronto Raptors all the time. So if you want to see more content just like this, you need to be subscribed to the channel and helping me on my road to 16,000 subscribers, and drop a like if you enjoyed this video along the way. Also, let me know what you think of the new intro video. I changed it for the first time in like a year and a half. It was about time we changed it. Very happy with it, but what about you? But we need to answer in today's video all of these questions surrounding the Damian Lillard links to the Toronto Raptors, because more and more reports are now emerging that yes, the Raptors are a team that is invested in trying to make this trade happen. Just as I suspected in the previous video, we talked about the Raptors being that mystery team. Well, there really isn't much doubt about who that mystery team is now. It is the Toronto Raptors making a push for the player, because the reality of the situation is we are like a week and a half away from training camp beginning, from media day, and Damian Lillard remains a Portland Trail Blazers player. We know the entire situation right now. He wants out of Portland. He wants to go to Miami, but the Miami Heat are not providing the right offer for the Portland Trail Blazers to take to trade a player of Damian Lillard's caliber, to trade a player who committed to that team on a supermax contract not very long ago, who then forfeited his right to choose his next destination. So Miami are essentially saying that if you're not going to trade it for this mess sort of package that we're offering, go ahead and find a better deal somewhere else. And it is the Toronto Raptors that are a team with the capabilities of giving the Trailblazers that better offer, but it is going to cost them an important player. We spoke about it in the last video, but the Raptors can offer something that Miami can't. Miami can offer the 2 first-round picks. Miami can offer prospects, but they can't offer a high-quality player like the Raptors can. So the Raptors have the ability to offer one of Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, and potentially even Scottie Barnes to make this trade happen. Miami just won't be able to match that. So essentially, the ball is in our court. The ball is in Masai Ujiri's court. If he really wants to trade for Damian Lillard, he has what is necessary to make that happen while still maintaining a competitive team once Damian Lillard arrived. But we need to assess, first of all, before we go into what it's going to cost, who it should be that goes to the Blazers, we need to assess if this is even worth doing for the Raptors. Last season, the Raptors were on the outside of the playoff picture looking in. They were the 9th seed in the Eastern Conference, as we know, lost in the first round of the play-in tournament, as we know, and in the offseason, there wasn't necessarily a doubling down on what the Raptors are going to be this season, but it was an investment and a commitment from the front office to keep this team competitive. Even losing Fred VanVleet for free, for nothing, to the Houston Rockets in the offseason did not deter the plans from maintaining a competitive team this season, because mostly, well, even without that first-round pick going to the San Antonio Spurs, only top 6 protected, but even without that pick going to the Spurs, I would have a hunch and I would have a big suspicion that the Raptors would still want to be a competitive team this season. But we are going into the season trying to be a competitive team. The only difference is we don't really have that security blanket where if things go wrong, okay, you can fall back and your draft pick can become something great? Potentially, but you can put more of a focus on that rather than the winning. But this year, like I said, it's only a top 6 protection on that pick that went to the San Antonio Spurs. So that security blanket just isn't quite there for the Raptors this season, so it makes sense to try and be a winning team this season given what the situation is. So, acting faster, Fred VanVleet leaves. They replace him with Dennis Schroeder. At the draft, they add in Grady Dick, who fits in really well with what the Raptors need. They were a poor shooting team last season. Grady Dick was the best shooter in the draft. The Raptors got that player for their team. So, everything makes a lot of sense in the way the Raptors are trying to be a competitive team for the upcoming season, sure, but is it really competitive enough for this to make sense? Is it really competitive enough for the Raptors to really want to, even with a slight, but is it really competitive enough for the Raptors to want to invest in this team? I even asked you guys what you think of the Raptors season. What do you think it's going to be for the Raptors season as far as where they finish in the standings? And keep in mind, this is a Toronto Raptors community. Naturally, we're all going to be have a little bit of a bias towards the Raptors. But even with that slight bias, and I would say in the polls that I run in the community on this channel, I would say that there is usually a much more than slight bias in the way these things are answered. But despite all of that, the majority of Raptors fans in this community feel as though this team is going to finish as the 7th or 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. Not far behind there is the 5th or 6th seed. And then we have a nice little bit of a bell curve where many people think as well that this is more of a play-in team, maybe on the lower side of the play-in tournament as well. And I was a little bit surprised by the answers here. I wouldn't say I disagree. In fact, I completely agree with the way the standings have panned out here. I think that the most likely outcome for the season for the Raptors is certainly that 7th or 8th seed. But can the Raptors put on a really great season? Can everything really gel together well under a new coach, a point guard maybe who gets the players involved around him a little bit more than Fred VanVleet and perhaps to a superior degree than Fred VanVleet? Can all of that come together and put this team as a 5th or 6th seed? 100% absolutely. But can we struggle finding our feet under a new coach, recreating an identity within this team? Perhaps Schroeder is a bigger drop-off to Fred VanVleet than perhaps we were expecting. Perhaps maybe some people would already expect that drop-off to be present there. Is Grady Dick not going to provide enough of the shooting to the team to really make up for the lack of shooting overall in the roster? Yes, all of these are possible as well. That could turn this team into a 9th or 10th seed or even worse. But going into the season, I would say a median position for this team, in my eyes, is a 7th or 8th seed. If you ask around NBA media in general, if you look through like sportsbook odds that would project these sort of things, they're a little bit worse than that. But I think 7th or 8th is a little bit of a fair spot for the Raptors to be in. So if we're taking even maybe an optimistic approach and saying it's a 7th or 8th seed likely for the Raptors, is that really where you want to be? I mean, I get it. You want to see a competitive team. You want to see a fun team. And I think the vibes for this team this season are going to be immaculate. And I recognize you don't have that security blanket once again at the first round pick to fall back on. But is a play-in tournament position, which is the likeliest outcome for the Raptors season, is that really where you want to be? Because in my eyes, for North American sports, you don't want to be in the middle. You want to be up near the top contending. You want to be up near the top really, really trying to make a push for a deep playoff run, or you want to be near the bottom trying to get the best possible draft pick. Now, the Raptors don't really have the opportunity to get that best possible draft pick, so they're stuck right now in the middle of the NBA. They're stuck in the middle. You don't want to be in the middle for the most part, because sometimes when it comes to being in the middle of the pack, this sort of thing, it's a bit different when you're going to be in the middle of the pack, but you're building something. You're building something for the future. You have a team in place. You want to see just what they can be and make tweaks as you go because you want that team to grow together. I wanted that for the Raptors not so long ago, but at this present point, it feels like we're juggling two different eras here. Yes, you want to see exactly what you have with Scottie Barnes. You want Scottie Barnes to get this experience of winning. You want to build for the future with Scottie Barnes. But you also don't want to do that with a team where necessarily he is like your third, maybe even your fourth option on offense. You don't want to do that where your team has a high likelihood of looking drastically different in a year's time. Siakam on an expiring contract, OG on an expiring contract, Gary Trent as of now on an expiring contract. So what are you really building for? That's where it leaves us in this position of not really knowing what we want to be, what we are going to be. And I think this provides a really good opportunity to make that big trade. We don't have the option of really going backwards. So why not make the trade that pushes us forward? Why not go all out for the season where you want to be a winning team and go and trade for Damian Lillard? That's the position I find myself in. But I'm not out here saying just make a trade for the sake of it. I'm not out here saying just go and do the trade because you have no other option here. Certainly, you can evaluate in a year's time after a possible play-in spot where it could be slightly better, could be slightly worse. But I'm in it here. I'm a big believer in Damian Lillard as somebody who can be the focal point of a playoff offense. And I think if you put the right tools around them, this could really vault the Raptors into contention. There's question marks about a lot of teams in the East. There's a lot of questions about the Sixers. We don't know if the Cavs will make the step up or the Knicks will make the step up or the Hawks will make the step up. I'm not a big believer in Miami. So the top two teams are Boston and Milwaukee. Milwaukee didn't get any better. A lot of older players. Leaves an opportunity for variance. The Celtics reinvented themselves. They lost Marcus Smart in a trade that brought in Porzingis. Is he going to be healthy? Is he going to be the right fit? Some question marks there. So the East, in my eyes, is as open as it can be right now, which provides the Raptors with the perfect opportunity to make that pivot, which we've been waiting for, to go and acquire Damian Lillard. So, in my eyes, yes, you should be making that push for Damian Lillard, but is it going to be worth it for your team to go and take that on? Because, like I said, it's going to cost one of Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, or Scottie Barnes. So, who should it be? What should the trade look like? If you want to absolutely maximize your 1 year, this season, championship possibilities. No brainer at Scottie Barnes that goes to the Portland Trail Blazers. You pair Damian Lillard with Siakam. Imagine like Siakam scores 24, 25 points per game with a team that has no spacing. Imagine Siakam with the spacing Damian Lillard provides. Scary thought. In my opinion, if you are acquiring Damian Lillard, you are acquiring him because you want to make him the star that makes Siakam your co-star. So Siakam does not get traded. But you also have to factor in long-term effects as well, because you do want to go in, but you don't want to completely lose everything on this going-in stance for Damian Lillard. That is why you probably wouldn't trade Scottie Barnes. So where the pivot comes into play, and once again, I'm going to reiterate, it makes a whole lot of sense to trade OG Anunoby here. He's on an expiring contract, and yes, in an ideal world, like I said, Barnes goes for the 1 season. OG Anunoby is that perfect complementary offensive player, plus the elite defensive stopper, the wing stopper that you likely need to go and win a championship, but you cannot sacrifice the future that Scottie Barnes could have for that. And with OG Anunoby's impending free agency, where I very much believe like 95% that he is going to test free agency the next summer, it makes sense to trade OG. And I think the Trailblazers would be happy to take a player like OG, much better than what they'd be getting from the Heat. They're still getting the 2 picks. And on top of OG, they're probably getting either Gary Trent, or they can get an assortment of players where they have some control over their contracts and they have control over the tradable contracts or expiring contracts. The Raptors can kind of finagle their way up to the big sum of money that Damian Lillard is owed this season in $45 million. That leaves maybe a bit of a thin team, but that leaves you a very talented team nonetheless. You still have Damian Lillard. Whichever way you go, you have either Gary Trent as the 2. If he's gone, then maybe you put Schroeder at the 2. You do 2 point guards, which has worked in the past with the Raptors. Or maybe even promote Grady Dick right away into a starting 5. Your forwards are Barnes and Siakam. I think that it is very much overrated that these two cannot play together. I think that it's underrated because I think they mesh well together. I think Siakam, with the ball in his hands, does well with Scottie Barnes cutting to the rim, adding a little bit of that cutting edge we saw in the rookie season. All of that with an excellent rim protector and pick and roll player on offense in Jakob Poeltl. It might be a bit thin. You can work ways around that, but ultimately, that's a contending team. That's a contending team. An even bigger contending team if it is Gary Trent the 2 and you have Schroeder as your 6th man coming off the bench. That is, make no mistake, a contending team. So what the situation is for the Raptors, yes, for a 1 year maximum, Scottie Barnes goes the other way, and Portland don't even hesitate to make that trade. But for looking at the team for a 1 year sample, plus what we have possibly down the line, especially if the Dame thing goes south, because he wants to go south himself. Maybe in a year's time, he asks for a trade again. Maybe he shows up and doesn't want to be here. Obviously, you communicate that before you make the trade. But overall, with this trade, OG Anunoby's contract, and I'll repeat what I said last video, OG trading him scares me because you're getting Dame. You don't know what that's going to be. He doesn't want to be here, potentially. But what scares me more is the thought of losing OG Anunoby for nothing in 1 year's time. A lot more safety with this trade, plus the big boost to really make yourself a contender in an East that is more wide open than it's been since 2019 when the Raptors won the NBA championship. What do you make of this Damian Lillard situation? Would you make this trade? Let me know in the comments. But that is it for me for today. For Toronto Raptors content all the time, subscribe to the channel, drop a like if you did enjoy, and I'll see you again next time for another video.